We're talking players that are undervalued at their ADP next on The Flex.
You are now listening to The Flex on the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. Subscribe now and tune in every week for all the advice you need to win your fantasy football league. And now, your hosts, Josh Rodriguez and AJ Kelly.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to The Flex presented by Fantasy Holics, your new go-to podcast for redraft leagues. Today, we go pole dancing over a few questions we put on our network's Instagram page, list our top 10 undervalued according to their sleeper app ADP, and a listener states his case for a player we criminally forgot to put on our list. But first, I'm Josh Rodriguez. I'm here with AJ Kelly. AJ, what's going on, man? How are you?
Josh, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. You know, first show's out the way. Second show up and going. Let's do this. I think we're going to get a rhythm pretty soon. Draft season is almost upon us.
Another week closer.
Yeah, man. I paid some fantasy dues today. It's starting to be real.
Yeah, that's when you know it's coming. Those are the first bills on the list. All right, I got to pay the fantasy dues and then rent and then everything that comes down.
Exactly. Before we get started, if you want to follow Fantasy Holics Podcast Network, you can on Facebook. Just type in Fantasy Holics, on Twitter at Fantasy Holics1, on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Holics Podcast. And it's not just us on the network's feed. We do have other shows, so be sure to tune into the Fat Boys Dynasty Podcast for all of your dynasty needs. Seth Berger hosts DWF, which stands for Defense Wins Fantasy for IDP leagues. And we have more shows on the way. So like I said last episode, if we're not your cup of tea, maybe somebody else will be. Just subscribe to the network, like whatever it is on that platform. And we have more content coming for you. Give 5 stars on Apple, give 5 stars on Spotify, leave a review. It's time for us to get started with a segment we like to call Pole Dancing.
You know you want it. It's time to go pole dancing. Get your mind out the gutter. We're talking about social media polls. My goodness.
All right, it's time to go pole dancing. We put up 2 polls on our network's Instagram page at Fantasy Holics Podcast, and you responded. We usually will use this to spark some type of debate going forward, but we wanted to get to know our audience a little better and hear your draft strategies and tell you ours as well. So, AJ, you ready to do this?
Let's do it.
All right, question number 1. What round do you typically draft your tight end? 8% said first round. 17% said second through fourth round. 33% said 8th round and on. And coming in at first with 50% of the vote, the 5th through 7th round. So 50% of our responders said that they take their tight end in the 5th through 7th. AJ, what is your plan when it comes to tight end?
I think I probably fall most of the time into the 8th round and on category. So you said 8% was in the first round. So 8% of people are out there wanting to leave a draft with Travis Kelce. I have my first round targets that are usually going to be a running back or a wide receiver. But if I'm drafting in the back half of the first round and the high end receivers are going on, I'm not afraid to draft Kelce because then you look at that as your wide receiver 1. That's the way I think of what is you're drafting him. But if I'm not getting that primo guy, I'm usually not going middle rounds, 4th through 7th. I'm usually not going that with the tight end. I think you can find value at the tight end position. It's been a crapshoot the last few years where really there's the top 4 and then there's everybody else, and it doesn't matter if you're ranked 5th or you're ranked 16th that week. I'm usually waiting until later at those times.
I'm a little different. I try to reach sometimes depending on who it is. Like I'll reach for Kittle maybe in the 4th, and I was kind of big on Pitts and Andrews last year. I reached for Pitts, I think, in the 4th, which ended up being a mistake. He wasn't bad, but I could have gotten better value there. So I would have answered 2nd through 4th, but I'm the type of person, if I don't get who I want in the 4th or 5th, I'll wait. Like I will wait. Like I wait for a quarterback, I'll wait for a tight end too. There's a list of maybe 5 tight ends who I would like to have on my team, which is your Kelce's and your Kittles and your Andrews. I don't reach for Kelce, so I guess I could say 3, which is probably your Andrews and your Wallers. And if I don't get them, then I totally just forget about tight end. And I'm like, I'll get it later. And I'm comfortable streaming tight end too. Are you comfortable doing that too? I know some people do that. I know some people don't really like doing that. Some people value tight end more than others. Do you feel comfortable streaming your tight end, or is that something you want to set and forget?
Absolutely. I'm comfortable streaming it. I've done it in the past. Just last year in my main league, I waited on him through past the 8th round, and I took Irv Smith in like the 14th round, and I thought he was going to be good. And then he gets hurt. He got hurt like the day after the draft. So I ended up streaming tight ends for the first like 4 weeks of the season before I settled in on actually being able to find some rosterable, startable players. So that's definitely something I'm comfortable doing at the tight end position because, like you said, you have those 3-4 guys. Those are your every week set it and forget it. but everyone else is benchable.
When you have an advantage at one particular position every week, obviously, I think that helps your lineup a lot, right? So for those who have Kelsey or Andrews, at this tight end position, I'm starting the week off plus 10 of my opponent already. So I understand that logic, and I kind of do agree with that logic a little bit, not to the point where I'll draft too far up. Like I said, go fourth and fifth round, but if I don't get it there, then I'm waiting, man. I'm waiting. I'm streaming just like you did last year. Let's move on to question number 2. What is your draft strategy? Now, this is incredibly reductive. I understand the answers are incredibly reductive, but just had to shorten it for Instagram purposes. And coming in at 0% was grab the tight end early. So nobody's draft strategy going in is I'm going to grab the number 1 tight end. Coming in at 17% is stack running backs. Coming in at 33% was stack wide receivers. And coming in at 50% is best player available. AJ, what is your draft strategy according to these options?
First off, going off of this, the 8% of people that voted first round on this skipped the second poll.
Right?
On the
I was like, where are you in the second question?
8% of people are like, oh yeah, I'll go first round tight end. Nah, I don't grab the tight end early. But then again, if it's Travis Kelsey, they could have voted best player available, which is usually where I'm going to fall into. So I'm usually looking at it from a best player available perspective. I mean, you can go into a draft with a plan, but everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And a lot of the time, drafts punch you in the mouth, whether it be a player you're not expected to be there dropping to you. If you're saying, I know yours is going to be, spoiler alert, stash running backs. Having played in leagues with Josh, I know that that's going to be his strategy. If Cooper Kupp drops to you at like 11 in the end of the first round, you're throwing your strategy out the window. Well, most people, you might not. Most people are going to throw that draft strategy out the window and take that best player available. Or if you have a thing where you're saying, okay, I'm coming out of first 3 rounds XYZ player. Well, what if before your picks every single time all those players go? You need to be able to adapt. And I think the best player available, fit them in. Cream rises to the crop in the lineup, and that's usually what I'm going to try to go with.
Yeah, AJ gave it away. I stack running backs. It's what I do. I want all 3 of my running backs better than your RB1. That's how I like my lineups. That's what gets me going. Don't understand why it is that way, but it is. But I will say that I have veered off course sometimes. There are players that I like. I'm not going to draft a running back just to draft a running back in the 3rd round. So if all of them are gone, I'll take a wide receiver there in the 3rd round, get a running back in the 4th or 5th round. And there are a lot of wide receivers, man. Like, we're going to go over a lot of undervalued players today. And a lot of these wide receivers that you can get in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, I'm not saying they're going to be wide receiver ones, but I think you can make cases for some of them, 1,000%. Like, I think I can make a case for grabbing some people in the 4th or 5th round that can be a wide receiver 1 for me on my team. And then I have 3 RB1s theoretically. So that's my strategy going forward. But I understand every strategy. I understand the no running back strategy, in PPR leagues where, it's a half a point of reception and, you have 3 of the best wide receivers on your team. And that strategy bodes well for a lot of people as well. I've seen really good teams with that. So I just think whatever you're more comfortable with and whatever I think you feel like you are better at. I feel like I tend to hit on the back end of the draft with wide receivers. I trusted my ability to evaluate wide receivers who are undervalued late in rounds. And that's why I'm comfortable getting running backs in the front end. All right, let's move on to our top 10 most undervalued players at their ADP. Now, again, this is value. This is not so much who is the best player, but where you can get them at the draft, what they can do for your team according to their average draft position. We're going to kick things off at number 10. It's Trevor Lawrence. His ADP is 151. AJ and I went back and forth trying to find a quarterback for this list. We settled on Trevor Lawrence. AJ, why Trevor?
I think I expect him to take the second-year leap, and it's a lot in the Jacksonville overhaul of the regime. I mean, if you look at the offensive minds they've brought in Doug Peterson. They've brought in Press Taylor as offensive coordinator, Jim Bob Cooter as passing game coordinator, Mike McCoy, quarterbacks coach. Those are some really good offensive minds that are coming in to help him out here. They spent on offense in free agency here. Now, we know it was Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, but they're trying to bring in some receivers. They still have – I like Christian Kirk, but Zay Jones is –
I like him too, but that's a lot of money to get in Christian. Yeah, Christian Kirk single-handedly broke the free agency market.
He did. Every other wide receiver looked at what he got paid and said, I'm getting more than that. But I just think their offense, with the overhaul, with the players they're going to have, Travis Etienne's coming off the injury. He'll be back. James Robinson also will be coming off injury, but we'll see what his production is going to be like. And then Kirk, Laviska Shenault, Marvin Jones. They bring in Evan Ingram, who I'll let you speak to as a Giants fan. But I just expect Trevor Lawrence to take that leap in the second year where I can justify his ADP 151. He's like quarterback 17, 18 off the board in there. If you're waiting on quarterback, I think that could be a guy you could be targeting.
Yeah, I agree. This was a generational prospect too. I don't think anyone forgot that he was a generational prospect, but his season was very underwhelming, and I think I'm putting that pretty nicely. But I think a lot of it, like you said, has to do with the coaching staff. And you bring in Doug Peterson. That's enough for me. Doug Peterson. That's enough for me. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is going to go out and beat Patrick Mahomes for a season, but I do think that he's going to have a way better year than he had last year. The Jaguars, I wouldn't say they have top tier weapons, but they have weapons. It's not like they're short of talent on the offensive side of the ball. You get ETN back this year, so you're going to have some type of running game if Robinson comes back healthy as well. I think Trevor's going to be fine. He does like to run the football too himself. You're going to get some rushing touchdowns there. At ADP 151, if you want to wait on a quarterback, that's past Kirk Cousins, that's past Matt Ryan. To me, he has a higher upside than a Ryan Tannehill, than other players around the same ADP. It's worth taking a stab there. I'm not saying wait for him and have him be your QB1 to start the year, but maybe if you're looking for a backup, this could honestly, I wouldn't say win your league, but I do think it could help you make the playoffs in a similar way in which Josh Allen did his second year, right? Josh Allen wasn't even drafted in a lot of leagues, and he bursted on the scene. He's getting 30 points per game because he's slinging the rock and running touchdowns into the end zone. And all of a sudden, the team that has Josh Allen is just whipping everybody's ass this year. So I can see that happening this year with Trevor Lawrence.
9.
Number 9, Marquise Brown. His ADP is 61, which makes him the 22nd wide receiver off the board. DeAndre Hopkins is starting the year suspended. So obviously for that reason, he makes this list, transferring over from the Ravens. AJ, he was your choice. Why Marquise?
I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like you said, the DeAndre Hopkins suspension. This is going to be 6 weeks where you're going to get wide receiver 1, Marquise Brown production in an offense that we know what Kyler Murray is capable of. Now, we know they're going to like to run the ball down around the red zone, and Kyler Murray's a threat to run. James Conner is going to score a ton of touchdowns. But I do expect Marquise to take a jump in the offense change. Arizona went out there and traded for him for a reason, I think. We saw what he was able to do in Baltimore, where they were run on offense. We know what they were like. 91 catches, over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. So we did see him have some bad drops. Those are going to make any low light real. But I think the upside is there. And if you're going to be getting him ADP 61, wide receiver 22, I'd be really happy to have him as a wide receiver 2 on my roster, because I think he's going to have that 6 weeks to build that rapport with Kyler Murray in live game time while DeAndre Hopkins isn't there. And then once DeAndre Hopkins comes back, we know all the attention is going to go to him, and it's just going to help Marquise Brown be even more open.
I'll add to that too. Marquise Brown, let's just say he's the wide receiver 1 there in Arizona and is putting wide receiver 1 numbers in the first 6 weeks. This is drafting at the ADP, and a lot of value doesn't necessarily mean that the value is just keeping them on your team. I think he's a perfect sell high candidate as well. If you don't think that he's going to continue his value when DeAndre Hopkins comes back, like that's how I look at Marquise Brown. Is for the first 6 weeks, I'm cool. I'm not really sure how it's going to be when Hopkins gets back, because that offense to me is very random. The way that James Conner runs the ball, a lot of dump offs, Zach Ertz is now in the mix, Kyler Murray running the football. I think he's a perfect sell high candidate, which means he has value. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to keep him the whole year.
8.
Okay, moving on to number 8. It's Hunter Henry. His ADP is 125, our 1 tight end on this list. AJ, why Hunter?
This is going back to what you said about Trevor Lawrence, how we wanted to get a quarterback on the list. We want to get a tight end on the list too. And I think this is where, we talked about it in the beginning of the segment, our draft strategies where we're reaching on tight end. I think if you're waiting on tight end, this is an ideal situation to be looking to grab Hunter Henry. ADP 125, you're looking at, what is that, the 12th, 10th, 11th round, depending on how many men are in your league, what you're going to go with. Whereas if you're looking to fill that position there, 9 touchdowns last year, 603 yards. He's just going to be getting better with Mac Jones. I think when they brought him in, they brought in Jonnu Smith at the same time. And I think a lot of that attention went to the Jonnu contract, whereas he was thought to be, okay, this is going to be their tight end. I think it's Hunter Henry, whereas he's going to be their pass catching guy. He's going to be who Mac Jones looks to. They brought in a couple other pass catchers, but I still think he's going to have that rapport with Mac Jones, especially in the red zone. He might not reach 9, but I think he's at least 7 or 8 touchdowns again this year.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think he can reach 9, maybe even double digits this year. I'm very high on Hunter Henry. 9 touchdowns last year, and he didn't see many targets in the middle of the season. Towards the end, after their bye, he saw 8 targets, 6 targets, 5 and 6, which for a tight end, you're going to take every single time with 9 touchdowns, of course. And he's a red zone threat at that. At his ADP, 125, we discussed earlier, if you're not getting a tight end in the 4th, 5th round and you're waiting 8th round and beyond, that's perfect right there. He's somebody who you can get later on in round 12 and whatnot and still, have value and still be a leg up at your position. I think it's a steal at 125, if I'm being completely honest with you. I think last year he was just kind of scratching the surface with Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones another year with Belichick is going to be better this year. He's not going to be Brady, obviously, but I do think that Hunter Henry is going to be a big part of that offense and a big part of the passing game. And I think if you can grab Hunter late in the draft, you absolutely do so.
7.
Let's move on to number 7, Allen Lazard. His ADP is 119. He's the 50th wide receiver off the board. Aaron Rodgers' number 1 wide receiver is the wide receiver 50. What is going on?
This is baffling to me at this ADP. If Lazard's on the board at 120, it's probably only because I didn't take him already earlier in the draft. I think he's going to be a top 30 wide receiver. That's screaming value with where you're going to get it. I mean, that's all you need to say. Aaron Rodgers, number 1 target, and he's going in the 10th round of drafts. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me either. I mean, he's still one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever live. And if you are the number 1 wide receiver in that offense, you're going to see targets, period. And Allen Lazard has proven that he has Aaron Rodgers' trust more than anyone, I guess, on that team. I mean, I guess you can argue Tanyan, and I think a lot of people think that Aaron Jones is going to take up a lot of receptions this year. But still, there's got to be somebody who's catching footballs in that wide receiver core, and it's going to be Allen Lazard. I mean, I predict at least 8 to 10 targets a game, maybe more.
At least.
So if you're getting that with Aaron Rodgers throwing you the football, sometimes the ball just ends up in your hands. You're going to be fine. And to be the 50th wide receiver off the board, that's insane to me. That is absolutely insane to me.
He's going to catch it by accident.
Yeah, this is someone who I feel like his ADP is going to rise as drafts start. I'll be shocked if he's still 119 by mid-August. Honestly, we're doing this show. It's early July, so things change very easily. But the fact that Sleeper app has him this low already is shocking to me. If you are breathing and running routes for Aaron Rodgers, you have value in my mind.
6.
Moving on to number 6, it's a pair of wide receivers on the same team. Usually I hate when shows do this, but we decided to do this anyway because it made sense for us. And it's Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Their ADPs are respectively 52 and 54. Russell Wilson coming in as quarterback. You have 2 very talented wide receivers. Both have shown flashes that they can be stars in this league or close to stars in this league, especially if they stay healthy. You have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Obviously a new offense there. I love this. You had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in Seattle. I don't know if any one of them are more talented than DK, but I do think combined, they're probably just as talented of a receiving core than they were in Seattle. And I think grabbing them in the late 4th or early 5th, wherever you can get them, this is a steal for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially on Sutton. Sutton's going off as wide receiver 24 right now. I think Sutton could scratch wide receiver 1 numbers. I think he might not get up there and might not crack the top 12, but I think he could outperform his ADP here by at least 9 or 10 positions if all goes well in Denver. Obviously, stay healthy between him, Russ, and same with Jeudy. I think Judy's going to be right there. I think this Broncos offense, obviously they bring in Russ, but they also get an overhaul with the coaching staff. We know what they're going to have in the run game with Melvin Gordon, with Javonte Williams, with what we saw last year, but that passing game is going to be entirely different. I think Judy's going to come into the year healthy. I think Sutton's going to come into the year healthy, and I think they could really explode.
5.
Moving on to number 5, we have Tony Pollard. His ADP is 90th, the 32nd running back off the board. Hard to believe there's 31 running backs going before him. I know there's a starting running back for each team, but Tony seemed to have some value there backing up Zeke. AJ, why Tony?
I think this is kind of a head scratcher. We talked about it in our episode 1 with Zeke, where we were kind of surprised when you look at the year-end stats with Zeke. He was RB7 last year, and that was Tony Pollard dipped into a lot of that production. So I don't understand how you watch Tony Pollard be so effective in that last year. And the Cowboys just lose Amari Cooper on offense. So they have more ball to go around now on offense. Tony Pollard's going to earn his touches. I think he's going to have serious flex option play, even if Zeke's in there. And then let alone the fact that you're getting an elite running back if Zeke were to miss time. That you're getting arguably a top 3, 4, 5 running back if Zeke misses time, and you're getting him at 90 after he already showcased what he's capable of doing in that offense last year. I think this is a steal.
Yeah, I agree. There was a report coming out today that he's actually going to play the slot a little bit as our wide receiver. So that's even more valuable in PPR formats. I do think he's going to see some carries. They're going to try, to manage Zeke's workload. I don't think Zeke's going to be this workhorse running back that he's been throughout his career. I think there's value in Tony. I think there's value in that switch up there. And like you said, if Zeke goes down, Tony Pollard is, top 3 handcuff. Off the top of my head that you could probably have going into the season, and he'll slip right in there and be an RB1, maybe low end RB2 for you. Not saying that Zeke is going to get hurt, but he hasn't been the healthiest human being on earth. He's played through injuries. I know he's fought through injuries and he hasn't missed too much time last year, but having Tony there, I think as a flex option, even if Zeke's playing, I think at ADP 90 to 32nd running back, I think that's fine. I'll gladly take him. I think he can be way more valuable than what his ADP here is. And I think he's going to far outperform the 32nd running back off the board. I think he has top 15 potential for sure.
4.
Number 4 is Allen Robinson. His ADP is 59. For me, it's simple. You are in the Rams offense. Matthew Stafford is your quarterback. You're running routes in an offense aside Cooper Kupp. And Allen Robinson is freaking talented. People forget how talented he is because he's been a dud fantasy-wise for the past couple years out there in Chicago, which is basically wide receiver Siberia right now. Man, I don't think Allen Robinson's had any problems whatsoever in this offense. I think he's going to shine. I think you're going to be seeing something very similar to what Robert Woods did and Odell Beckham did. And I know he's, a little bit of a different receiver than both of them, but I still think that he's going to have a fantastic year if he stays healthy. His talent alone will just get him there. We'll get him open, and Stafford's going to find him. Any wide receiver too in this offense is a must own for me.
Yeah, I love Allen Robinson. I think he's one of the more criminally underrated wide receivers. And then you even look back, last year, who knows what was going on in Chicago last year. So I'm going to throw that one out the window. But even in 2020, cracked 100 catches, 1,250 yards, 6 touchdowns. So you look at those numbers and you can see what he's capable of. And now, like you said, he's coming into this offense that he can fill that Robert Woods role more than capably, where he's going to do that. And we saw what Woods was capable of last year before his injury. And then we know the attention Cooper Kupp's going to get. We'll see if the Rams end up bringing back Odell Beckham Jr. I think they do in the long run, but I think that could also still help Allen Robinson with this. So I think he's going to step in. It's a seamless transition into the Rams offense for him, but given his talent level at wide receiver, I think he fills in very nicely.
3.
In at number 3, we have Hunter Renfrow. His ADP is 89, which to me is absolutely criminal. Listen, I know Devontae Adams is over there now. You have Darren Waller probably eating up some targets, but Hunter and Derek Carr formed a nice connection last year. Definitely like a Wes Welker type or Julian Edelman type receiver for Derek Carr. Is a red zone target. He averaged 6 receptions per game. The targets are going to be there. I think he's an established receiver in that offense, got a contract extension over the offseason, so that they're planning on using him. To me, ADP 80, that is an absolute steal. If you're someone like me who likes to wait for wide receivers in the mid-rounds, I think grabbing Hunter Renfrow, he could easily be your wide receiver too, and I plan on drafting him. I plan on snatching him up. To me, this is criminal. I cannot picture him staying at 89 up until draft season. It'll shock me if he doesn't jump up at least like 20 spots. There's no way he stays here.
Yeah, this is the wide receiver 13 overall last year we're talking about. And we're talking about drafting him 89th overall. And the only thing that changed in that offense, there's going to be less of the ball to go around with Devontae Adams. But Hunter Renfrow is going to be just as open, if not more open than he was when Derek Carr constantly looked to him. Hunter Renfrow is going to put up numbers. They're going to be there. So if you're taking that getting that at 89 overall, that's an every week start, whether it's a wide receiver 2, whether it's a flex, wherever you're putting it in. That's a guy you can comfortably start that you're getting late in these rounds here.
2.
And at number 2, we have David Montgomery. His ADP is 36 to 20th running back off of the board. AJ, why David?
Yeah, ADP 36 here. I'm just looking at this. If this is the last pick of the third round, I'm thrilled to get away with this with David Montgomery because I think this is RB1 upside. I think the Bears offense, they're going to have more time. Justin Fields, obviously, this year. I like Justin Fields. I think he can elevate that Bears offense to a more competitive level. And I think David Montgomery is still going to be the workhorse in that offense. He's going to lose some touches to Khalil Herbert. I think they like him, and I think they'll give him more time so he's not just a handcuff. But I still think David Montgomery is going to have an extremely high floor. And if I'm want to draft an RB2 late in the third round and I'm looking at that, I'm thrilled about getting one that has an extremely high floor.
All right, and number 1 on our top 10 most undervalued at their ADP as of right now, it's Najee Harris. His ADP is 8, which means a first rounder, but he's the 5th running back off the board. AJ and I are really high on this guy. If I had the number 2 pick, I'm taking Najee Harris. AJ, what are your thoughts?
I love Najee Harris. It feels very awkward to say that a first round pick, we have him here in undervalued. The opposite of the first round pick being overvalued, where we had McCaffrey in last week's episode. But we still have a first round running back here that we think is undervalued because if I'm at 2 or 3 overall, I think I'm taking Najee Harris too. I think he has a high floor. I think without Roethlisberger, that Steelers offense, we know what Roethlisberger was obviously capable in setting up plays and getting everyone in the right position. But I think his physical limitations were clear last year when you watched him play. And I think with what you're going to put into the Steelers offense, whether it's Trubisky or whether it's Kenny Pickett, whenever they do end up starting him, Najee Harris is going to get a ton of catches. He caught the ball an enormous amount last year. I think that kind of shocked everyone with how much they did. And he's still going to be a workhorse running the ball. So if I'm drafting 2 or 3, I'm giving Najee Harris a very serious look. And as a dynasty manager that has a running back duo of Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris, I am very thrilled with the outlook on that team.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, I think Najee Harris is basically Le'Veon Bell 2.0 there. I think they're going to run the whole offense through him. Mitch Trubisky or Pickett, whoever is going to be running that offense. I don't think Mike Tomlin is going to be slinging the rock, let's say. I think it's going to be a lot of safe stuff. It's going to be a lot of ground and pound. And even when he goes back to pass, I think a lot of it is going to be, hey, dump it off to Najee. Like I just feel like in PPR formats, he's going to be an absolute beast. He's going to have a touchdown at least every game. I think it's going to be a monster year for him. Everything is just set up for him to run that offense. And the Steelers are always competitive no matter who their quarterback is. They're going to be in games, so they're not going to, being blown out or any of those things. And so he's always going to be in the game. You're going to get 4 quarters from him. I think if I were the second pick of the draft, as of right now, as of today, I'm taking Harris, and I'm confident with it. All right, well, that does it for our top 10 most undervalued list. But before we go, we have somebody who wants to challenge that list, who wants to state their case for a player who they think should have been on that list. It's time for State Your Case.
State Your Case, Representative Genius Christ. Upon hearing our top 10 undervalued list, Genius immediately had a problem with our rankings. He is here to represent an unknown fantasy football entity and put forth an argument as to why this entity should have been in our top 10 most undervalued at their ADP rankings list. What you're about to listen to is real. The participants are not actors. They are actual fantasy football analysis with valid fantasy football opinions. The representatives have agreed to this podcast format with your host and judge, Josh Rodriguez, and host NDA AJ Kelly. The Flex, presented by Fantasy Holics, presents State Your Case.
Genius Christ, please step to the podium and explain opening statement or who you have as one of the most undervalued according to their ADP and why they should be on our list.
The player that I'm going to select that I don't see on this list is in a new offense with a new quarterback. He's actually put up some decent numbers the past 2 seasons as the number 3 receiver. I just don't understand how he's still just so undervalued. That player is none other than Tim Patrick.
Do you have any evidence to support why you think Tim Patrick should be on our top 10 most undervalued list?
Well, I think for me, the list you guys made, number 6 stands out, and it's actually 2 of his teammates, in Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. I am aware that their ADPs are very close to each other, somewhere probably in like the 50s. and Tim Patrick is somewhere in the 140 or 150, depending on what platform you're on, range. But Tim Patrick actually has finished ahead of Jerry Jeudy. He's finished close to last season to Cortland Sutton, and it's actually has had more double-digit scoring games than Cortland Sutton. And the same argument and case that's been made for Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, I just don't understand how it doesn't apply to Tim Patrick, someone who completely goes under the radar consistently. And he's getting a new quarterback in Russell Wilson, who gives just an overall boost to the entire offense. And I am willing to easily take that shot with Tim Patrick, who has players like Mecole Hardman and Devontae Parker in his range where others are drafting. Mecole Hardman hasn't put up nowhere near any of the stats or has broken out to the degree of Tim Patrick. And you got guys like Devontae Parker, who's teamed up with Mac Jones, who's nowhere near Russell Wilson. I'd rather take that shot with Tim Patrick, and I am very, very confident that he's going to surpass his ADP greatly, barring injury.
All right, well, resident host AJ Kelly and Flex defense lawyer, what do you say to that?
All right, here's what I'm going to start with. First off, I love it, and it's going to kill me to argue against the Denver Bronco here because, as I said in episode 1, I am a Denver Broncos fan. I do like Tim Patrick. But the reason Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton are on our list is where they're at is because I think they're more transcendent talents. I think they're better. I think we've seen Russ in the past do this where the Seahawks tried to get him a third wide receiver last year in Dwayne Eskridge. Now, Dwayne Eskridge had some injury issues, but the relevant Seattle wide receivers were Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. And this year, I think the relevant Broncos receivers, for the most part, are going to be Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy had some issues with the drops his rookie year, and then Jeudy was hurt last year as well, which is where you're going to see the stats come in. But Tim Patrick has never surpassed 1,000 yards in a season. 742 is his career best. 53 receptions is his career high in receptions, and 85 targets in those. You brought up the receivers being drafted around him. Tim Patrick's number 3 in that Denver Bronco passing offense. Arguably number 4, Albert O. We'll see how what they do. They got rid of Fant, how they utilize Albert O in the passing game there. But we know the Broncos offense is going to be Sutton, number 1. I think Jeudy, number 2. And then I think you have Albert O and Tim Patrick in the passing game. And we know they're going to run the ball with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. And you mentioned Devontae Parker and Mecole Hardman. The Chiefs just got rid of Tyreek Hill, and Mecole Hardman is now the number 1 receiver that's a speed asset that can fill that Tyreek Hill spot that's tied to Patrick Mahomes. Devontae Parker is the number 1 receiver in New England, and he finally gets a clear shot here, and he gets some good time here to come in with a full season of Mac Jones in the offseason. So those being the 2 guys that you can grab in that area, I feel like I'm more inclined to take a shot on a top-tier receiver in an elite offense in the Chiefs. I still expect them to be fantastic even without Tyreek Hill, obviously. And the number 1 receiver in New England, which I think Devontae Parker could develop some good chemistry with Mac Jones. For that reason, given that ADP, I'm more inclined to take a shot on either of those 2 over Tim Patrick.
I think it's very I'm going to be nice with this one, for lack of a better word, criminal to think that Mecole Hardman is the number 1 receiver on the Chiefs just because Tyreek Hill leaves. Tyreek Hill leaves. Mecole Hardman wasn't even the 2nd or probably 3rd receiver on that Chiefs team when Tyreek Hill is there. There's still Travis Kelce. I know we in the fantasy world, we kind of, go with the motto of what have you done for me lately. There's a lot of recency bias, and we seem to have forgot Juju Smith-Schuster and the potential he can have as a reception monster and PPR monster in that offense with that quarterback and one of the greatest offensive minds in Andy Reid. So I'm not 100%. I also haven't seen Mecole Hardman break out nearly to the degree of Tim Patrick, and that's not even like a hard thing to do because Tim Patrick hasn't necessarily done much. Yes, he hasn't had 1,000-yard receiving season. Cortland Sutton, let's not act like he's just been, busting out 1,000-yard receiving years. He has one for 1, 2, but I'm not even making an argument against Sutton so much as I'm making an argument for Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick just got a new contract, 3 year to be exact, and I don't see that type of commitment from a team to go to a guy they don't plan on using. They don't see as a key player, role on this offense, and having an impact with the new quarterback to the level of Russell Wilson. I also feel like Devontae Parker, he's been probably one of the poster childs of just underperforming and not reaching the potential, underperforming his ADP where he's drafted. He's also on the Patriots team who they like to run that ball. You know what I mean? I understand the talent might not be near as Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, but I mean, there have been a lot of undrafted players who've just been absolutely amazing before. There have been 6th-round picks who've outperformed the top first-round picks on their teams, like Julian Edelman's of the world. So I'm just going to buy something that you just can't really, not only the numbers and the stats, but the evidence too. If you watch, you've got the eye test. You know what I mean? You see Tim Patrick play. He is a reliable target. He catches everything, unlike Jerry Droppy. And
objection.
And you know what? Let me just say this. I love Jerry Jeudy. I'm a huge fan of Jerry Jeudy. I was a big fan of him coming out. He has disappointed me a bit, but I'm just not ready to spend that capital on Jerry Jeudy and Sutton. I'd rather spend that on another receiver in that range who might, I don't know, I haven't checked, but I think Allen Robinson might be in that range somewhere. Like, I'd rather go with somebody like Allen Robinson over Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, and then come right back and get Tim Patrick rounds later. You know what I mean? And someone who could potentially put up similar, if not better numbers than Jeudy, and definitely similar numbers to Cortland Sutton because he has proven he just did it last season.
All right, AJ, our defense attorney, one rebuttal and then closing statements.
All right, last thing I'll say on that is Jerry Droppy, as he calls him here, in his rookie year where he did struggle with the drops, put up 52 catches for 856 yards. Tim Patrick, and that was considered a disappointing season for Jerry Jeudy. Tim Patrick, by all metrics, everyone loved what he did last year, had 53 catches for 734 yards. So he had one additional catch and 120 less yards. He had 5 touchdowns. Jeudy had 3 his rookie year. I think a lot of it is the expectations, like you said. If you're going to draft that, like you said, you invest that high capital. Broncos invest a first-round pick in Jerry Jeudy. You expect a high return. So when he puts up that type of stat line, it was disappointing. When Tim Patrick puts up that stat line, it was, okay, this is fantastic, which is, from fantasy purposes, exactly what the argument is from Jerry Jeudy's ADP to Tim Patrick's ADP. Yes, there's a wide range in there, but I think Jerry Jeudy's upside makes it, if I want to target a Denver Broncos pass catcher, I want it to be Jeudy or Sutton in that 50 range, and I'm okay with that.
All right, Mr. Genius. One last closing statement, a plea to the listeners, why Tim Patrick should be on this list.
One last plea, just please listen to me. Tim Patrick will outperform his ADP, barring injury, to he or Russell Wilson. And that, for me, is all about the value in my mind. Yes, Sutton and Jeudy possess the upside that, Tim Patrick, and, you may even argue that, the KJ Hamler oozes with more upside than Tim Patrick. I'm not even going to even argue that or deny that. The fact of the matter is, the place where they're going in the draft, their ADP, their position, is just, to me, it just screams value more with Tim Patrick, with some upside as well. You know what I'm saying? Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, yes, they have the upside, but there are other high upside players at that ADP in that range with a little bit higher floor, if you will. I named one of them before, and I think I'd much rather take a shot with those guys and then come back around again and circle with Tim Patrick. But again, if you want to draft purely off upside, by all means, go with the drops. But if you want to, play it smart. Tim Patrick's a guy, genius.
All right, AJ, closing statements, minute or less.
Closing statement, all I need. ADP around the area. Mecole Hardman outscores Tim Patrick. I would rather have Mecole Hardman.
Oh, wow. Is this like a legally binding bet that we're forming between both of you right now? In the court of fantasy football? I don't know what kind of court this is, but I guess the courts of fantasy football. Is this a legally binding bet that you guys are willing to shake on right now?
That's funny.
Tim Patrick versus Mecole Hardman.
Yes, we are. That's funny.
Let's do it. I think I just saw this. I think I just saw the stenographer write it down over there in the corner.
Right. Definitely did. That's interesting considering, you think Mecole Hardman is the number one receiver on the Chiefs. And we're arguing the number 3 receiver on the Broncos going against the number 1 receiver on the Chiefs. But I love it. I'm willing to go with Patrick still.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for State Your Case. We're going to have our listeners and our viewers decide whether or not Genius made his case for Tim Patrick to be in the top 10 most undervalued list. Genius Christ, thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys. Good talking. Let's do this again.
Yes, sir. All right, that's going to do it for this show. Once again, if you want to follow The Flex, you can on Fantasy Holics Podcast Network's pages, which is Fantasy Holics on Facebook, Twitter at Fantasy Holics 1, Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Holics Podcast. Like I said before, we are not the only show on the Fantasy Holics Network. We do have the Fat Boys Dynasty podcast for Dynasty. We have the DWF Defense Wins Fantasy for IDP leagues. We drop episodes every Thursday morning, so be on the lookout for that. You can tune in next week. Maybe we'll have another guest to kick with. Maybe we'll have some audience participation. Who knows? Until then, it's draft season, baby. Peace.
You are now listening to The Flex on the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. Subscribe now and tune in every week for all the advice you need to win your fantasy football league. And now, your hosts, Josh Rodriguez and AJ Kelly.